There are reports going around that Jubaland army has taken over BP1 Mandera. Uh, First of all, the opposition, I think Mr. Rigathi Gachagua was the first one to blow the whistle. The opposition has said it. The government was very quiet for a long time, which is not good, especially if the allegation has some truth in it. If it was completely baseless, then we could understand if the government decided to ignore that. But it has some truth in it. It was important for the government to react and tell us the position. You cannot underrate or underestimate the statement by Mandera leadership, governor, senator, and even residents of BP1. I want to give my little information that I know about the story or the place and other historical facts that can only be given after being provoked by such an incident. So I'm elaborating on two things. I'm elaborating on Jubaland. I'm elaborating on Jubaland having the army. Some people may even be wondering, Jubaland is which country? I want to elaborate on Jubaland. I want to elaborate on Jubaland having the army. And I also want to give you the picture of BP1. I want to give you the picture of BP1 so that those who are Mandera and Lokitang. Is it Lokichokio? Mandera and Lokichokio are the farthest town from Nairobi. So it would be good for me to give you people a general picture of Mandera town and Jubaland and issue and whatever that. First of all, I want to take you to Mandera in an imaginary, assuming assuming that you have never been to Mandera, but you have been to Nairobi. Assume that Kawangware Sokoni is Mandera in Kenya. Assume that Kawangware Sokoni is Mandera in Kenya. And assume that Kenya Science Teachers College is Mandera in Somalia. Assume that Kenya Science Teachers College is Mandera in Somalia. Mandera in Somalia is called Bulahawa. Mandera in Somalia is called Bulahawa. Bulahawa in Somali, Bula means estate. Or a better example is America. USA, we have towns that are called Johnsonville, whateverville. Eh? Somalis also have their ville. So when you hear Bula Pesa, that is Pesaville, Bula Hawa, Hawaville, Bula Jamuria, Jamhuriville, something. Towns in America are, many of them are called Ville, to Jacksonville, the town of Jackson. Just like Bulahawa is the town of Hawa. And who is Hawa? Hawa is our great-grandmother, wife of Adam. So Bulahawa means Evesville, yeah, Evesville. Mandera is a sort of a wild fruit that is, okay, Luyas call it Obusangula. Luos call it Osangura. I think they call it so. They look like dengu. They look like dengu, very much like dengu. But if you eat, they are very bitter. And I remember when I was used to look after our family cattle, they are bitter, but we used to like eating them. So I don't know why people like it. That is why Mandera. That is the name of Mandera. But if you go, I want to give a picture of this. When I was in Mandera in 1990, the three towns were one town. The three towns were one town. How can you explain a place where you can move to three different towns in three different countries, but you have moved all throughout on foot? You have moved throughout on foot. So just like you can come from Kenya Science, you come to Kawangware Sokoni, and then you cross over Mau Mau to Kangemi. So Kangemi, assume that it is the Mandera of Ethiopia, and it is called Malka Suftu. Malka Suftu. In Borana, Ville, as I said, Somali, it's called Bula, and Borana, they call it Malka. You find there's Malka Sade, Malka Suftu, Malka Mari, Malka. So that is Borana. You find that the Mandera in Ethiopia is called Malka Suftu. Just like when you are in Mandera of Kenya and you want to go to Kangemi on foot, you pass through Mau Mau, isn't it? And you can come from Mau Mau, come to Kawangware Sokoni, and so that is how close they are. Then people are talking of Jubaland soldiers occupying. Jubaland soldiers are said to be occupying the, what do you call, BP1, especially BP1 primary school. They are said to be occupying BP1 primary school, which they are saying that they are occupying BP1 primary school, which they have converted into a military training center. When I was there in 1990, BP1 was not occupied. They were just farms, shamba. And this is what I want to give you an example. You see, as you cross over to Ethiopia, there is a river called River Dawa. So many people in Mandera use the water from that river for irrigation. Now, I want to give you an example of somebody in Kawangware. I've said Kawangware is Mandera ya Kenya. I said Kenya Science is Bulahawa in Somalia. And I've said Kangemi is Malkasuftu in Ethiopia. Now, I want to give you an example of how you can estimate the place where, I want you to estimate the place where BP1 is. I would say that BP1 is Lavington Shopping Center. Shopping Center. If you are at Kawangware Market, if you look to the east, that is, what do you call? If you look to the east, that is Kenya Science. And if you look to the north, that is Kangemi. But somewhere along northeast, hapo hivyo Lavington, you can call it, that is the area of BP1. Why is it called BP1? Kenya, I don't know when it happened, but most probably during colonial time, Kenya set out to place their beacons on the border. The beacons, the Kenyan beacon starts at that place where three countries meet. At BP1, three people can talk. Three people can talk. If you can look there, you can. I wanted you to see something. If you look closely, you can see those young men. Yeah. At BP1, you can talk to them when they are in Ethiopia. And you look at the other direction, the same distance, you find people, same distance like that, they are in Somalia. So it is quite possible for the three of you, one is there, another one is there, just that distance. The three of you can talk while in three different countries. But my experience is that at the BP1, if you have to talk to somebody in Somalia and somebody in Ethiopia at the same time, then you have to shout. You don't have to talk, you have to shout. Because somebody who is 50 meters away, 50 meters to the north and 50 meters to the east, I think the three of you have to shout when you talk. That is BP1. Now, the government, Kenyan government has beacons. It has laid beacons. If you look at Twende usually identifies those beacons. Those beacons have got numbers. The first one, it is called border point. So those beacons are called points. It's a border point. The first one is at Mandera, where the three countries meet. And I think by the time you reach the you see in the newspapers we have that border control, border control, where you enter Somalia through a tarmac road. Now that border control, I think that is where BP3 is go, and it goes all that way up to somewhere in Lamu, and then it picks somewhere uh, south coast. Then from south coast it goes all the way to I nearly said Kisumu, all the way to Migori. Then from Migori it picks up at Siaya, goes all the way to Turkana, Turkana, South Sudan, and then it goes it borders Southern Sudan, goes that way, Ethiopia, up all the way back to. So those beacons are counted, and each one is identified by border point 1, 2, 3. So I don't know how many they are. So I think I'll start with that. Then I also want to elaborate, because people, each country has its unique constitution. Each country has its own unique constitution, whereby each people they sit down and decide which constitution they feel is okay for them. Let us start with the police in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. Among many countries, you find that Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, they have only one police service or force. The police in the three countries are controlled from the national capital by an inspector general. It is a centralized police service. In other countries such as the USA, there are various levels of police. There are various centers of police. In the USA, there are is it 3 or 4 levels of police? There is the city police. City police. That is why you see their vehicles are written NYPD or LPD, LAPD, New York Police Department, or Los Angeles Police Department. So there is the city police. Then there is the county police. There is the county police. The third one, there is the state police. There is the state police, or sometimes they're even called state troopers. But we have one police force there that is called FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, which acts as both as federal police and also federal investigation, or federal DCI. What in Kenya we call Kanjo derives their name from city council police, although now they have become county police or something. So we can say that the county law enforcement agency can be called county police. But Kenya, I don't know why we did not do it, but we should have had these Kanjos being called police officers. The US, they have a third level of state before you go to federal. County or the city police take care of city laws. If you're within the city and you break a city law, for example, if you commit a federal offense, a city police will not arrest you unless he's arresting you on holding while waiting for the proper people to come. So the city police handle city laws, not bylaws. We used to have bylaws, by the way, but laws. And that is why you find that we had a change in Kenyan law, Kenyan constitution 2010, because we used to have bylaws by councils. You see, councils, county council is not like county government. A government makes law. Councils make bylaws. Bylaw, if I have to describe them, bylaws are half laws, nusu sheria, and then state police deals with state offenses, and so on and so on. When it comes to the military, now that is what I've given an example of the police, where we have countries, many countries have, okay, not many, but we could say a reasonable number on this side and an unreasonable number on this side. The reasonable number is that we have centralized police, and then we have what do you call it, devolved police through the state, through the county, and so on. But when it comes to the military, it is very hard to have the state or province, county, town, or armed forces. They don't have. In 99% of the countries in the world, 99%, there is only one military that covers the whole country. Even in federal republics. But I'm made to understand that for a funny reason, the Texas Constitution allows it to have its own army and air force and whatever. And yes, they have Texas Air Force, but whom do they fight? But that is a story for another day. Let me repeat myself. In 99% of the countries in the world, there is only one military in the country, even in countries that have federal. But in a few countries, a handful of countries, very few countries, we have Somalia. We even have Palestine. Palestine, you find that Hamas is a political party on the Gaza Strip, and it has its own army. But today we are talking about Somalia. Somalia, there are provincial governments with their provincial armed forces. Even provincial governments have presidents and whatever, and then they have federal president. But what is different from this? We have very many countries where we have very many countries where provinces have presidents and so on and so forth, but provinces do not have armed forces. But in Uganda, not Uganda, in Somalia, there are provincial armed forces. So we have federal troops commanded by Mogadishu government, by the federal government in Mogadishu. They also have at the provinces both an independent government inferior to the federal government and have armed forces independent of the federal government. I will only give two examples of the two provinces which are in the forefront of such. We have Puntland. Puntland is somewhere between the boundary of Ethiopia and Somalia. Puntland is somewhere in the middle of Ethiopia and Somalia. Puntland has its own provincial government and Jubaland. These are the leading two, but that does not mean that other provinces do not have. We should not, and we should never be confused with Hargeisa. We should never confuse this with the Hargeisa. Hargeisa, or the old British Somaliland, claims to be a brother state of the Mogadishu government, and they want to be treated just like any other government in the African Union, AUC. So when it comes to Hargeisa, those are secessionists. Secessionists. Who are secessionists? Secessionists are people like, one time people are used to, in Northeastern, they wanted Northeastern to get out of Kenya and either join Somalia or become an independent country of its own. Those are the secessionists. So Hargeisa claims to be a republic of its own. But these other ones like Jubaland, uh, Jubaland and Puntland, these are provincial government and provincial military. Occasionally, the provincial military and the national military do fight against each other. Just like Jubaland have fought the national army, they were pushed westwards. Just like, okay, let me now talk about Jubaland fighting the national army. Let me just say that I just realized that I told you that Puntland is that piece of province that borders Somalia and Ethiopia. That is Jubaland. But when you comes to no, that is Puntland. Puntland is between Ethiopia and Somalia. That province that borders Ethiopia and Somalia. Puntland. Jubaland comes all the Jubaland is the province, the last province. What example can I say? Can I call it Western province of Somalia? Yes, I can call it Western province of Somalia because it covers all the parts, all the boundaries we have between Kenya and Somalia. That is Jubaland. That is Jubaland. So it shields us from main we border it. I'm trying to look at another province that is that way between Kenya. Okay, let us take even Somalia. You see, Somalia can say northeastern is the the province that borders us with Kenya. I don't think, apart from small parts of Lamu, but mostly you will be right if you say that northeastern shields Kenya from Somalia. The same way Kenya can say that Jubaland shields Somalia from Kenya. That is the whole boundary of Kenya and Somalia is Jubaland. It's Jubaland. That is what Jubaland is today. I'll tell you about Jubaland, the historical facts of Jubaland. I mean, that is maybe why Kenya and Jubaland is very close to that. Just like Jubaland have fighting the national army, they were pushed westwards. I said that is Jubaland could be called Western province of Somalia. They were pushed westwards out of Bulahawa into Kenya. And you see, moving from Bulahawa into Kenya, it's like crossing over from it's like crossing over from Dagoretti Corner into crossing over from Kenya Science into Kenya, but into Kawangware. But instead of going towards the Kawangware town, which is now the Mandera town, they move towards, they go to a place called Lavington Shopping Center. That is where, so they are very near because from border point 1 to Somalia, Bulahawa, it's like from Lavington to Kenya Science Junction Mall. So that is where they are. And the concern Kenyans have is that, you see, if they start shooting into Somalia and Somalia retaliates, people who stay there. Okay, there is also the allegation of them performing their training there and whatever. Even if they are not performing their training, by their mere being present in BP point 1, BP border point 1, it's like Somali army being at Kenya Science, and their enemies are at Lavington. You see, that is within a shooting range. That is within a shooting range. So those people, whether, if you ask me, I think the residents are right to say that they are practicing whatever. But I just want to talk from another point. I want to say that even if they are not practicing, even if they have not turned, even if they have not turned that into a training field, their mere presence there is a risk to residents of. First of all, they have occupied the school. So border point 1, border point 1 primary school students are not going there. When I was in Mandera in 1990, there was no school there, border point. But you see, people develop. So it is. I want somebody who has been to Nairobi to figure this. that the federal government is placed in Kenya Science. And at Lavington Trading Center, okay, let me say Lavington Mall, people are there who are against the Somali government. Don't you think that they can be shot from Kenya Science? That is for you to come there. So it is a risk to the resident there. If you remember very well the story of, Hamas, if you say uh, the story of Hamas, you'll find that Israel Israel has killed a lot of people, including journalists and other third-party people. By they just did a very simple thing. They would just say that we had intelligence that a leader of Hamas was stationed there. So if one country is terrorist, if Israel believes that terrorists are in a certain building, they blow it up. What would stop Somalia from blowing up Border Point 1 primary school when it is already known that Jubaland military is there? A few hours ago, Murkomen said that it is acceptable for escaping military to be disarmed at the border and repatriated to their country, or they go to refugee camp. That is true. Now, assuming that these people, because even during my time it happened in 1991, what happens is this, I want to tell you. uh, Somalis are one tribe, cousins, but let me talk of it in a Bantu way. For those who are not Bantus in Kenya, forgive me. Let us assume that Kenya is like Somali, where Bantus are fighting, where Luyas are fighting Kikuyus, and Kikuyus are fighting Mijikenda. Yeah, all of us are Bantus, and but there is Luya, there is Kikuyu, there is what do you call it, Mijikenda. So what happens, because Puntland is like in Western Province, yeah, Puntland is like Western Province. So let us assume that we are somewhere in Busia. Let us assume that we are somewhere in Busia. We have what do you call Western Province government. We have Western Province military, which we'll now call it Jubaland, and because Baganda and Bagisu are close to Luyas, they are sympathetic. Things get hot. We cross over from Busia to Busia, Malaba to Malaba. That is what we do. So what happens is that the central government is run by Kikuyus. Central government military is run by Kikuyus. Then the Kikuyu come to Western, attack Luyas, then Luyas cross over to Uganda. That is what is happening there. Mogadishu is most of the time run by Siad Barre's clan. I'll remember maybe I'll remember. So these people are occupying the federal government, while they are occupying the federal government, the government and the military. Why? That, for example, Uhuru Kenyatta's government is full of Kikuyu, and we Luyas in Western, vitu kama hiyo. I'm only giving as an example. So they do that, and they attack the Luyas. The government, the Kenya government, Kenya Defense Forces, which is predominantly Kikuyu, goes all the way to Busia, attacks the Luya crossover to Busia in Uganda. And if there is a primary school in Busia in Uganda, they go to that school. There is always the risk that the federal government in Somalia can cross over or even shoot from within. Now, the tribe that occupies the western part of Somalia, Jubaland, is Ogaden. And Ogaden There are very many in Somalia and there are very many in Kenya, especially from half of Northeastern. We could say half of Northeastern. If you are to draw a straight line from east to west, south of it is Ogaden people. And Ogaden people are close to Jubaland. And even the head of Jubaland, Abdi Madhobe, is very close to the Kenyan government. Not Ruto government, but all Kenyan government. Actually, the Kibaki attack, the Kibaki and Nusumkate government, when they entered Somali, they wanted to make a buffer zone, and that is why Kenya from that time has always Kenya from that time has always supported Jubaland so as to act as a buffer zone uh, for it to create a buffer zone for Al-Shabaab to get out of there, to cross over to Kenya. They'll have to cross an enemy territory, which is Jubaland. Now, the purpose of today's shoot is to do with the question of what is Jubaland and its historical connection to Kenya. I have talked of Jubaland today. I've talked about Jubaland today. And the Jubaland that I'm talking about today is the Jubaland in Somalia. But Jubaland used to be bigger than that. Actually, Jubaland in Somalia is a half of the original Jubaland. Now I want to talk about the original Jubaland. If you look at the map of Kenya on the eastern side, you'll find that there is a very straight line. There is a very straight line from north to south, isn't it? But it reaches a place called Elwak, then it slants and takes a trajectory which moves from southwest to northeast. And then at the bottom of this straight line, somewhere near Lamu, there is another one which transaction which goes uh, from northwest to southeast. It goes all the way into Lake. No, it goes all the way into Indian Ocean. Now, make an imaginary connection. You see, there is that line that goes that way, and then there is that line that goes that way. But in the middle, we have a very straight line in the northeastern way. Now, assuming that those two lines, you join dotted line, between the one that comes from up there. If you draw a triangle, we can say you draw a triangle inside Kenya using those extended line. The triangle will come and meet at a place called Habaswein. The triangle, the two will, it will now be a triangle inside inside Kenya. They meet at a place called Habaswein. Now, if you take this triangle of Lamu, Habaswein, and Elwak, you take that triangle, and then you take a mirror image, a mirror triangle of that one inside Somalia. You see, the two triangles will form a shape of a diamond, isn't it? Now, that diamond is what used to be called Jubaland province. Jubaland province. Between 1918 and 1920, the Kenya-Somali boundary went into Somalia, and actually Kisimayu was part of Kenya. Kisimayu was part of Kenya. That is why it is said that a freedom fighter, what is his name? Harithuku. Harithuku and other freedom fighters were taken to Kisimayu. During Harithuku's time, Kisimayu was part of Kenya, or was it called British East Africa? Kisimayu was part of British East Africa. And so, one thing I'm trying to say is that if you draw something like a diamond shape, half of the diamond shape is in Kenya, and the other half of diamond shape is in Somalia. you will find that that is the original Jubaland province. But around 1918 to 1920, the boundary was altered, that Jubaland was cut into two. Jubaland was cut into two. And that is why the boundary between Kenya and and Somalia is a very straight line, which runs from north at Elwak up to south in Hulugo. It was made that way because I don't know the reason, but the British decided that Jubaland had to be divided into two. So that is the mine. Hey, people are saying that I don't know. People say I'm good in talking about security matters and intelligence matter, uh, although some are uncomfortable with it. But many, especially young people, young men and young women, say that I'm the greatest history teacher Kenya has ever produced. Well, thanks for the compliment. What I can say about that compliment is that it feels good to be appreciated. And most of the stories I find it is good to have. Even when I was working for the NIS, we used to be told that anything anybody does, we have to ask ourselves about the historical perspective. It has to have a historic perspective, because we have to ask ourselves, why is Kenya very close to Jubaland province and the Jubaland military? And as I've said, let me repeat for the last time, Kenya is close to the Jubaland since Kibaki's time, because it was Kibaki. The reason why Kibaki took the military to Somalia was just one thing. It was to create a very strong Jubaland military. It was to create a very strong Jubaland military, so that cases of Al-Shabaab coming and infiltrating Kenya, they will have a buffer zone. They'll have a buffer zone whereby if they have to cross Jubaland from east to west, they will have a hard time. Another thing that Kenya has connection with Jubaland, yeah, I've remembered the president's tribe. President Siad Barre is a Marehan. Now the national government is run by mostly Marehan, and Jubaland is Ogaden. We don't have Marehan in Kenya. We don't have, but Marehan are just like Kikuyus. They are centrally placed near the capital, and most of the time they are the ones who are ruling. So the difference between Marehan and Ogaden are found in Kenya, Somalia, and Ethiopia. They are found in Kenya, Somalia, and Ethiopia. Ethiopia, there is Ogaden region. So Kenya and even Ethiopia, both are close to Ogaden tribe, because it is good to have, and I can say it without fear of contradiction, is that it is good to have the Jubaland military very strong. It's good to have a military in Jubaland very strong, so that we have, if Jubaland collapses, if Jubaland collapses, military-wise, then the chances of Al-Shabaab infiltrating into Kenya are very high. I've given the current and past, what do you call, a perspective, and I'm very proud and I feel very happy. You make my day when you call me a great history teacher, and I hope in this particular recording I have not disappointed you. Thank you.